this is the only promised moment we have. I'll live every day like it's your last day. Like, that's impractical. I've tried it. It doesn't work for very long.
Today's guest survived a heart and double lung transplant at 22 after battling a life-threatening heart defect since birth, and then went on to become the only person in history to run a marathon with a transplanted heart and lungs 4 times.
I was in right and left-sided congestive heart failure. So my body's retaining fluid, which makes you not hungry. So I'm not eating. I'm winded because there's fluid in the lungs. I'm a mess medically.
Mark Black is a certified speaking professional, resilience expert, and author who's inspired over 175,000 people across the globe.
And if we feel like we're not doing those things, then we feel this sense of disease or discomfort that we're not quite where we need to be. Think about the times when you feel most alive. When are the colors brighter and the smells are sharper and life is just vibrant?
He's here to share what real resilience looks like, how to break through your own limitations, and why thriving through change isn't just possible, it's a choice.
Mark,
Stu.
what's your relationship with adversity?
I have tried my best to make adversity my friend, I guess. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that we are who we are, not in spite of, but because of the things that we've been through and the challenges in particular. So I try. I mean, the human nature is, I think, to kind of resist it. But with the background that I've had and the experience I've had, I know now that the good things that can come from it. And so when it presents itself, I try and go, okay, what's the opportunity here? What do I need to learn? Because at the worst, you're going to learn something. At best, you're going to maybe find an opportunity that wasn't there before.
Why do you think it's human nature to not want to experience adversity?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think our nature is to seek comfort, right? I think our nature is to seek stasis, homeostasis, and so any kind of change is unnerving in that way. But I mean, there's just the ample evidences to the contrary, right? That we need adversity, we need challenge, we need change, we need all of those things. And I always joke to people that people think, I ask people often in sessions I do, I say, how many people love change? And of course, like one hand out of 200 will go up. But then I say, but we all understand that we need it, right? That if we didn't have it, you would actually hate that too. And the example I give them is, if you remember the Bill Murray movie Groundhog Day, I'm like, no one wants to live that life, right? So like, clearly we want change. We think we want predictable, controllable change or novelty, but that's not what the world gives us. So we have to figure out a way to have a better relationship with what we get.
100%. And I think, that desire towards comfort makes total sense, especially if you rewind the clock, a few hundred years, let alone a few thousand years, when you're out in the wilderness and exposed. And we want stability in our diet, stability in our home environment.
Totally, survival, right?
Survival. Yeah. And I think, moving into this, now we're just abundantly comfortable.
Right.
Like climate controlled environments and bubble wrapping things, and everybody can get a ribbon. And, we've creating actually environments where we're setting ourselves up to not experience distress, discomfort, adversity. And so I think that makes it particularly challenging. And it's something actually that I admire about your approach and your way of living, because I look around, and even be it the people I work with or in my, social sphere, it's easy to find reasons to blame external things. And you've had probably more than maybe anybody I know to blame and contradict or put anything out. And I mean, I'll let you share a little bit about it, but you took adversity and just ran with it.
Well, I mean, thank you. First of all, I'll say a couple things. One is I have have the gift of two remarkable human beings who happen to be my parents. And it was only, I think, I had some appreciation, but it really took me becoming a parent to understand how, like, the birth lottery that I won there. In the sense that both phys ed teachers by trade, and I think that mattered because the like that making friends with adversity is built into sport in general, right? Like, you're not always going to win. You need to practice your skill. You need to practice your sport to get better at it. You're going to fail. You're going to get injured. Like that's all just part of that ecosystem. And so they made some fundamental decisions when I was very young. As a kid who was born with a congenital heart defect, I had open heart surgery when I was 1 day old. It would have been super easy to bubble wrap that kid. It would have been very tempting to bubble wrap that kid and be like, he's fragile. We need to protect him at all costs or he's not going to survive. And what they did instead was took reasonable precautions, obviously, but at the same time, we're like, no, he's a kid.
Mm.
He's going to, within reason, he's going to do what every other kid can do. And so I played sports and I fell down and scraped my knee. And my aunts and uncles and will tell me stories. I don't remember of when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, and they would look at this kid who's got this massive scar down his chest from this surgery, and he's running around and he's being a kid, and they're nervous, and my parents are like, "No, he's a kid. Like it's gonna be fine, right?" And so from that very early foundation, I learned that the world's a challenging place, but that's okay.
Mm.
That we can do hard things, and that laid the groundwork for the unavoidable hard things that came later.
Mm. Yeah, because even remember was it 23 years old
Yeah,
that you ended up?
yeah. So I mean, a lifetime of hospital visits and things like that was just part of my childhood. I didn't know any. I remember being like 8 years old before I clued in that not every boy on the beach had a zipper down his chest. Like I was just like, oh, that's just me. Cardiology appointments were just normal. And then when I was 23 and 24, I was at U of B. I was doing my education degree to be a teacher like mom and dad. That was the plan. And just over the course of the semester, second semester that year, just like something's wrong. Like I'm getting tired easily, and I'm getting out of breath going up the hill there in Fredericton at UMP. But I'm also a 24-year-old guy, so I'm just like, right. I know what I'll do with the health symptoms. I'll ignore them, and it'll probably get better. So I get home at the end of the year. My mom took one look at me and was like, "You're going to the hospital now." And we went to my doctor's first, and he took me to the hospital right away. And I had lost like 20 pounds, and I only weighed 110 to begin with, so like it was a significant amount of weight. And it turns out I was in what's called right and left-sided congestive heart failure. So my body's retaining fluid, which makes you not hungry, so I'm not eating. I'm winded because there's fluid in the lungs. I'm a mess medically, and so they admitted me to hospital. I was in hospital for almost a month, and then at the end of that, they're like, "Okay, so you need a heart and 2 lungs like yesterday, and the chance of us getting you a transplant in time are virtually zero. But if you don't get them, you've got maybe 18 months to live. So what do you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not going home to die. So
Mm.
get me on a transplant list if you can." And I was really lucky that the transplant team in Toronto was willing to kind of take a flyer on a high risk patient and put me on their list. So my dad and I, a few months later, packed our stuff. We moved to Toronto because I had to live within a 2-hour drive of the transplant center to be put on the list. And we left my mom and my 3 younger brothers here in Moncton, and got there, and they put me on the list in October of 2001. And I had the transplant basically a year later, September 2002. So about a year on the list.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And here you are. It worked. And again, you could have found so many reasons to bring yourself a pity party and be mad at life, which I'm sure there was aspects of that.
Sure.
And also, you were running a marathon 3 years later.
Yeah, I mean that's I have for better and worse, I have a bit of an all or nothing personality. So it's kind of like if I'm gonna run, then what's the ultimate version of that? Now there's like ultras and there's other things, but back then that was like the ultimate thing to do. But yeah, look, and it wasn't. I mean, in retrospect, now over time, I think it's had a positive impact on some other people, but it was really for me, it was about proving to myself
Hmm.
that I could do. Like if it's like if I can do that, then I'm good. Like I can do anything I want to do. And so it was really just kind of testing myself, my body, my mental stamina to say, can I make myself do this thing? Um, and I didn't know the answer, but I knew the only way to find out was to try.
I love that mindset too, because I think so many people that I work with, and myself included, I'm still unpacking parts of this, but I've spent much of my life trying to prove myself to my mother or to my father, or I'm
Yeah.
that part of me that feels not good enough,
Yep.
and trying to prove it externally.
Yep.
And really, that practice of bringing it back in, like, this is for me, this is about me. I don't need to prove myself to anybody else. So I really love and respect, even at that young age, to say, no, this is to prove to myself.
Well, and look, in fairness, I still deal with that as I mean, look, we live in a social media conscious world where we're putting an image out there all the time. So and because of the business that we're in, I mean, I'm susceptible to that just like everybody else is. I think again, the gift of facing mortality young is it gives you that perspective that everybody gets at some point in their
Mm,
life. It's just often we don't get it till we're 70 or 80 years old. You get it sooner because the end is real sooner.
mm,
You know what I mean? Like any of us could die tomorrow, but for the most part, if you're healthy in 30, you're not thinking about that at all until God forbid something happens to maybe a friend or someone that age, and you go, "Oh, right, I'm mortal." But when you face it day in day out, like I was 6 months. The last 6 months I was on the transplant list, I was in the hospital because my heart was so fragile that it would race out of control for no reason, and that left me at risk for what they call sudden cardiac death, where your heart just stops. And so you live with that like reality in the forefront of your mind all the time. You got to figure out a way to cope with that, right? And so eventually you go, okay, I got to be okay with that possibility,
mm,
uh, and therefore a lot of other things wash away and are just not particularly important.
mm. That's very interesting. We live in a death phobic culture,
Mm,
and it's clear to me that many of our symbolic rituals and our practices are really geared around pushing death off into some eternal future that doesn't even exist.
sure.
Make a case for why embracing, our finitude. I know you've kind of just have here, but even more, how can we learn to embrace death a little bit more in our lives, not from a negative perspective, but a realistic perspective, and what impact might that have on us?
Uh, yeah, I think it's just the best. There's nothing like facing death to teach you how to live.
Mm,
Like once you are accepting and cognizant of the fact that death is real and that this life is finite, it I mean it can make you scared, but once you get past the fear, then it goes, okay, well, so I want to make this time meaningful
mm,
because it's gonna end. I found like there's nothing like facing the reality of death to teach you about how to live, and that it gives value to life if you frame it that way. So people, these days we're all talking about like technology and medical technology and AI and like, oh, we're going to extend lifetimes for 180 years or 200 years, or maybe we can live virtually and forever. And it's interesting, but it's also kind of like, well, so what value does life have if it's not finite? Like, how does
mm,
that change the value of our existence if there's no end to it?
mm.
I don't know the answer, but it's interesting. And so it's not I mean, this isn't a new idea, right? Like Stoics talked about um memento mori, remember that you're going to die,
Right.
right? And Marcus Aurelius would talk about like every day remembering tomorrow could be the end, and therefore that gives a healthy sort of urgency to how we live life.
Yeah, I mean, the Stoic practice, and even reading into Marcus Aurelius's journals, his personal journals that were never meant to be exposed, and seeing the life of a man who was so intimately connected with death. I, I've even heard it put in a way that it's hard to really fully live until you can embrace death.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because there's even that study on like the last thoughts of the dying, and relationships are the things that matter. It's not our status or our bank account or how many followers we have on any of these places.
Yeah.
It's the moments.
100%. And I mean, I lived it, and that's 100% true. I did not think about. I mean, there were moments, sure, at 23, 24, where I thought about the career plans. You know what I mean? Like the future that I was maybe not going to have. But ultimately, it was about how can I get as many moments with the 5 to 10 people that I care about the most,
Mm,
right? How can I spend the most time I can with the people that I care about most, and everything else is like so secondary.
hmm.
Yeah.
Sounds like that's really carried forward. You mentioned earlier about going into places and asking people about change.
Mm.
How do you offer, what advice or support would you offer to somebody to incrementally get more accustomed to change and actually even embracing it?
Right. So I mean, I call it strategic discomfort, which
Mm,
is can on a as a practice, whether it's daily, weekly, whatever, put yourself in controlled uncomfortable situations. And that can look like a numerous things. I mean, clearly you're a guy that like I am, who works out and goes to the gym. What are we really doing there? We're making ourselves intentionally uncomfortable,
mm,
right? The strain, the discomfort, the pain, the next day soreness. That's all intentionally making ourselves uncomfortable because there's a positive payoff on the other side, right? But that can show up. You can do it in a number of ways. Um, Cold water exposure is another physical element of that. But look, you can do it with mental exercises. Uh, well, we live in a world of constant stimulation. You could how about try and sit quietly with yourself for 20
mm.
minutes and see how that feels. For most people, that's incredibly uncomfortable, right? So whatever it is, do public speaking. I mean, a lot of people, that's like their worst nightmare.
Mm,
But what you learn from that, whatever the discomfort is you reinforce the circuitry in your brain that goes, "Oh, this feels uncomfortable, but I survived. I'm okay.
mm.
What did I learn? I'm probably a slightly different or hopefully better version of me than I was before that thing. And now I have a little bit of confidence for the next time I have to face something that's uncomfortable."
Mm. I think that's such a huge piece of it. In education, that term's actually called the zone of proximal development. And there's a place where if it's not challenging enough, we're not actually creating, the neurons aren't firing in the way that builds the new neural pathways. And if it's too much, our nervous system goes out
Gets
of control.
overwhelmed. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the most valuable assets or commodities that I think anybody could have in this age of distraction is presence,
Hmm.
and the capacity to be able to be present with whatever is in that moment. Because as you said earlier, we can't change the external circumstances,
Right.
but we do have the choice in each moment to change our reaction to them. And I think intentional discomfort is this place. It's like, okay, from a regulated nervous system, how can I push my edge of what's possible?
Right.
Because now I'm expanding my capacity to stay present and make logical, grounded decisions in the hard conversation with my
Mm-hmm.
partner,
Mm-hmm.
when the business is falling apart, when my health is falling apart. How do I actually expand my capacity to be present and come back to choice, come back to my
Yes.
agency in any
Love that.
given moment?
Right. Well, and that's uh, when I talk about resilience, people often the common analogy is, well, we bounce back from adversity. And I was like, get rid of that, get rid of that analogy because it doesn't work. One is we can't. There's no going back, right? Like we can't return to something that used to be. It's gone. We're now in this present moment, and in 10 minutes we'll be somewhere else. So forget that idea. But let's grow through instead of bouncing back. Let's channel and leverage the adversity into what psychologists would call post-traumatic growth, right? So that we're not just surviving, we're actually a better version of ourselves because of what we've just been through. Um, and that requires a mindset that says, I'm going to be okay, right? I have the capacity to cope with challenge and change.
Mm.
I don't have all the answers, but I don't need to have the answers. I have to trust my capacity to find the answers.
Yeah, trusting my capacity. And as we were talking before off camera, I think self trust is something that's also quite scarce right now. And as you mentioned, you know, I'm not doing the things that I said I would do, or I'm not that honest with the reality of things that are going on. And so I think it's really hard to trust it's going to be okay if I'm not
Mm,
fully trusting myself in those moments. And so it becomes very almost suffocating
right.
to actually be able to do that. So even just in those small moments, as I build a stack of evidence that proves, hey, I am the person that goes to the gym, not just says that I do it. I am the person that initiates a hard conversation because honesty is required in my relationship.
Right.
I am the person that shows up in my business even when things are chaotic and it's the last place I want to be. All of a sudden, I can just build this stack of evidence, and that becomes an identity shift.
Bingo. Right. So habit stacking, because that's how it happens. It's slow, consistent over time creates, and you hit on the key piece there, which is identity. People people forget how important it is to internalize these things. It's great to have a list of goals and a vision board, and all those things are great. But what's really powerful is when you can say, I'm the kind of person who does XYZ,
Mm,
right? It's not just, I'm going to quit smoking. It's no, I'm not a kind of person who smokes,
mm.
right? Or I'm going to go to the gym. No, part of who I am is someone who values fitness, and therefore I'm going to the gym. So it's integral to who I am as a human being. It's not just something I want to do.
I love that. Again, in psychological terms, that's intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation.
Right.
And the way I've kind of broken that down to a more practical framework for me is this idea of a push pull. And I think most things that are worthwhile in life require a push to get
Right.
started.
Right.
And it's probably not going to be part of my identity, and it's probably not going to feel very great.
Right.
Just like, going to the gym, it's not easy at first. But now I notice when I don't go.
Right.
I notice it when
Right.
I don't have the hard conversation. I notice
Right.
those things. So now I'm actually being pulled towards the life that I want to lead.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. The momentum shift, right? You think of the ball rolling down the hill. Yeah, it takes some momentum to get it moving, but once we get it moving, then it becomes easier and easier, and then it becomes harder to not do it than it is to do it.
100%.
Right.
And I think another huge piece, and I'd be curious to hear your take on this, but something that's been an absolute game changer for me is my circle, my environment, because those are the places that I need to know that I'm going to be honest with those people where I'm out of integrity, where I'm not showing up, where I need help. I mean, it's
Mm,
been a struggle in my life to ask for help.
sure.
Very good at giving, very poor at receiving. And that's been something that I'm becoming a receiver.
Mm,
But what's your take on like the people that we surround ourselves with and how that impacts our growth or whatever trajectory?
absolutely. I mean, we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. I think that's absolutely the case. And and what I think a lot of people forget is our ability to engineer that, right?
Mm,
Most of us, okay, well, this happens. My circle just kind of becomes my circle, and maybe it's friends of a partner or spouse, or it's whatever, and it just kind of haphazardly happens. Well, okay, but we can decide if I want to level up in some area of my life. Well, who do I know who's executing at a higher level than I am in that area?
mm,
Who could I tap into that would provide a good example to me in that area? Um, Whether that's, there's all kinds of ways to do it, mastermind groups and men's groups and whatever the case is. But when you surround yourself with people who are at a higher level than you, inevitably it forces you to go up a notch because you feel out of alignment with the rest of the group if you don't. And
mm.
so, and conversely, you can also decide to surround yourself with people who are kind of at a lower level than you and allow yourself to fall to that level because it's comfortable and easy and they don't hold you to a higher standard. And I mean, that just depends on what kind of life you want to live.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it'd be pretty easy if you work out once a month and anybody in your friend group hasn't in years to think that you're the
You
strongest
feel like
person
a rock
around.
star. Yeah,
You're
right.
gonna be like
Exactly.
Rocky.
Yeah,
But
100%. Yeah, no, that's right, and there are people that do that, right? There are
Right.
people that, whether they're aware of it or not, they surround themselves with people who have a lower standard or a lower performance level so that they can feel okay in their mediocrity,
Hmm.
even though they know deep down that they could be performing at a higher level. And they go, "Oh, well, look, yeah, at least I'm not as bad as this guy."
Right.
Well, like, is that the way we want to, or do we want to go?
Mm.
Yeah. Now we have to. I think there's also a balance there, right? Because we can get to that point of like, well, there's always the next mountain to chase, and do we ever feel? So we have to figure out the. I call it content but never satisfied. So figuring out a way to be okay with where I am while at the same time trying to grow forward,
Mm.
and that's a challenging balance to
That's a
find.
delicate balance. How do
Yeah.
you navigate that? Because I mean, that's something in my life. Striving, the more piece has not been my challenge.
Right.
It's more about the contentment in those moments. It's that side of the scale. How do you reconcile that in your life?
I think that's been, um, well, first of all, it's being aware of it, right? So it's just
Hmm.
catching yourself going, okay, am I striving after this because I really want it, because it's going to lead to some growth that I want, or a result that I want, or whatever, or is it because I need to chase the next thing because I feel uncomfortable just enjoying where I am, right? Like, what's the motive behind it? Like, is it a not enoughness that's causing me to strive after this next thing,
Mm.
or is it because I really want that thing, or because it's going to lead to some growth? So it's being aware, and then again, I think it's the perspective that we talked about earlier of uh, again, the gift of facing my mortality at a young age, the gift of still dealing with some chronic illness issues, is it balances out the striving and the chasing after, and the, yeah, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur and I want my revenue to grow every year, and I want to do more every year. But then I go, okay, well, wait a minute, but I got this. I want to be healthy too, and I want to be able to enjoy whatever revenue we're generating, and I don't want to put myself in the grave early because I made an extra $50,000 this year. So where's the give and take, the yin and yang?
Mm. I think another thing for me is slowing down, just taking intentional, deliberate moments in my life to be out in nature, to go to a spa. Even I've been starting to build in like quarterly offsites,
Hmm.
and just these opportunities to look at my life with my partner. Where am I going? What am I building towards? And is that from the right places for the right reasons? Do I feel, for me, what I'll say around this is like I don't think true purpose for me is captured in a mission statement. I think what I long for when I say purpose is a feeling of fulfillment and a feeling that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to
Hmm.
be, doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing with the people I'm supposed to be with.
Yeah,
I think that's what I really long for.
I agree. I think we all want to feel like we're contributing, like we're using our gifts, talents, abilities the best way that we can, that we're making a positive impact in some way in the world around us, however small that might be, and that we're growing, right? I mean, we have a
Mm.
fundamental need to develop and grow in some capacity, and if we feel like we're not doing those things, then we feel this sense of disease or discomfort that we're not quite where we need to be, and so, but at the same time, making sure that the ladder is leaning against the right wall, right? Like, it
Mm.
gets very easy if you, once you start down whatever path you've decided to start down, there's probably a pretty clear preconceived path of what comes next based on whoever's idea of what that's supposed to be. If you're, in a corporate world, then there's the next promotion and the next promotion and the next promotion. And at some point you got to go, okay, well, what's the end game of that? And is that something I really want?
Mm.
Or am I just pursuing the next thing because that's what I'm quote unquote supposed to do?
Right. And so much of that time we've inherited that by external expectations or some default pressures and end up just getting caught up in that treadmill. For somebody listening who's, like, okay, I know my ladder's not leaning on the right wall, where would you suggest they start?
I One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard, and it's not mine, but someone said, think about what think about the times when you feel most alive. And I love that phrasing of it.
Mm.
When do you feel most alive? When are the colors brighter and the smells are sharper and life is just vibrant? Okay, now what are you doing when that's happening? What kinds of activities are you doing? And then how what might that translate into something that you can earn money doing, right? And maybe that's entrepreneurship, maybe that's not, maybe that's in a corporate world, maybe it's not. And it's not so much a field, it's the activity, it's the thing itself. Like, because people all the time will choose careers based on like their perception of what they think the career is. We've both been in education, right? And people will watch Dead Poet Society
Hmm.
or Mr. Holland's Opus and be like, well, that's education. And then you get into a classroom and you're like, oh, that's not what education is,
Mhm.
right? And so you better love 70%. I say you're never going to love all of it. But if you can love 60 to 70% of the real day to day of whatever you're doing, you win. Like that, to me, that's it. Because we're going to spend a large portion of our life in our working hours
Mhm.
doing whatever it is we do to sustain a living. We better enjoy a big chunk of it.
Yeah, yeah. And again, as we approach death, that becomes more and more real because, like, well, I'm pushing fulfillment, I'm pushing presence, I'm pushing these things off into the future, where there does become a reckoning where, well, all I really truly have is a stack of series of moments.
Sure, absolutely. And so, to me, the worst nightmare is to get to 65, 70 years old, having worked my whole life at a job that I didn't really like, because then I was going to get to retire and live life, and then dying of a heart attack the next year. And that story happens all the time,
Yeah.
all the time. And so, look, we have to live life. We got to pay bills. So, like, I get it. I don't mean to sound impractical, but I think you can find in real everyday jobs, you see people doing what others might call unfulfilling work. I meet on the road all the time. I meet people, uh, stewardesses and stewards on airplanes, waiters and waitresses, people in jobs that some people might consider kind of, I don't know, unfulfilling work, who are clearly loving what they do,
Mm.
and others who aren't, right? And I've also met people who are entrepreneurs, business owners who thought they were pursuing their dream, who are now caught in a nightmare of their own making that they wish they could escape from. So I think this preconceived idea of like, yeah, you don't need to necessarily go and do your own thing. You can find fulfillment in wherever you are, and a lot of it's an internal game.
Getting that mindset right.
Yeah,
Mark, I could talk to you for hours.
likewise.
I'm really loving this. We're going to sign off for this time, but is there any last message that you'd like to leave, to share for anybody listening who's maybe had their heartstrings plucked?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I would say don't be don't be afraid to experiment and try and slowly a- adapt, experiment, be uncomfortable a little bit. Um, and at the end of the day, I have a tattoo on my arm that says "Live Today,"
Hmm.
and it reminds me of what a lot of what we've been talking about today, which is this is the only promised moment we have, right? I could leave here and go get hit by a car, and it's not. I'll live every day like it's your last day. Like that's impractical. I've tried it; it doesn't work for very long. You can only skydive so many times. But we can live with the knowledge that today is a gift,
Mm.
and if we use it well, pretty consistently, then we build this life that we can look back on, hopefully in a long time, and go, yeah, I mean, I wasn't perfect, but I used my time pretty well.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.